Hello everyone, this is Luxon here with another Splatoon 2 video guide. This time I'll be talking about how to choose the control scheme that works best for you in Splatoon 2. Now, if my voice sounds a bit different in the rest of this video than it has in the past few guides, this is because this was actually originally intended to be my first Splatoon 2 guide video. I was originally planning on making one every 3 weeks to a month, until I later decided on doing one every Sunday. So I had to re-record the intro because I was talking about how, okay, I'm going to be making guides from now on, and the game's only been out for a month. So it's kind of been 3 months now, I think. I kind of had to re-record that. Anyway, let's get into the video proper. Since I'm going to be assuming a competitive context for this entire video, I won't be discussing mods that let you play the game with a keyboard and mouse, as well as holding the system in your hands and playing. If you're working in a LAN tournament setting, the mod will be banned in the first place, and there's going to either be a monitor to play on, or a table you can put your Switch on while you're playing. You might prefer to play in an online tournament, just holding it, but this video is going to be talking about using it as a console as opposed to a handheld. Generally speaking, there are 3 options when it comes to the physical controller, same as with other Switch games. You can have the Joy-Cons separated, either as is or in an ergonomic cover like I have here, the Joy-Cons combined, either on the grip that comes with the system or one of the charging ones you can buy separately, and the Switch Pro Controller. When it comes to pure feel, unless your hands just aren't the right size to use it, the Pro Controller is by far the best feeling when it comes to shape, button layout, and especially the heftier weight. I'm not too familiar with the Xbox One and current third-party controllers, but I like the Switch Pro Controller more than my DualShock 4, and any Nintendo controller from the past 2 generations. Compare that to the Joy-Cons, which kind of need the cover to feel natural and balanced in your hands, the fact that only the right Joy-Con is responsible for motion controls, which can mess a few things up, and the awful cramped grip that's nigh unusable for someone with larger hands like me. In my opinion, Pro beats Joy-Cons in cover by a long shot, Joy-Cons in cover beat Joy-Cons without cover, and Joy-Cons without cover beat the grip again by a long shot. You'd think this makes the Pro Controller a no-brainer, but there is one more factor to consider. The Pro Controller has an input lag of 1 to 3 frames more than the Joy-Cons, which doubles if it's plugged into the console or even just a laptop or something via USB for charging. While input lag from the wireless connection in larger TVs still exists from the Joy-Cons, they do have a distinct advantage over the Pro Controller in terms of quick motion. If you're dead set on using stick controls, which hopefully you aren't, I'll talk about that soon, I would recommend the Joy-Cons, separated, in the covers if you can get your hands on them, but for the sake of not destroying your right wrist, I'd still say use the Pro Controller if you're using motion controls, since the lag can somewhat be gotten used to with enough practice. On that note, it's now time to talk about control methods. Splatoon 2 features both stick controls as well as motion controls. Before I go on to explain anything in depth, I have to say that motion controls are the objectively superior control method, and almost every competitive player uses them. If you're already settled into using motion controls and feel comfortable with them, or use stick controls because you're unable to use motion for health reasons, you could safely disregard the rest of this segment of the video and skip ahead to the timestamp on screen now. If not, allow me to explain further. Both Splatoon games suffer from pretty bad stick controls. They're quite stiff and lack any perks like aim assist that console shooters usually have. They're obviously not the method the game was intended to be played with, and were probably left in for the sake of people who physically can't move a controller around. Now, if you can't use the motion controls for health reasons and still want to enjoy Splatoon 2, of course you should play with the sticks. But if you're able to use motion and aren't using it, the only obstacles to succeeding with it are the learning curve and your own unwillingness to experiment. When I said motion was objectively better, I was not just exaggerating based on personal preference. Simply put, in addition to the vastly smoother and faster aim motion offers, it also allows you to make more inputs at once than sticks, which in turn leads to more actions per minute, and therefore faster, more efficient play. What I mean by this is that in order to aim with stick controls, you need to have your right thumb on the right stick. Now, what other really important input do you use the right thumb to make? Hitting the B button to jump. This means that unless you want to use this really awkward claw that would be almost impossible to do on a Joy-Con, which remember I recommended you use if you have to use sticks, if you wanted to be able to adjust aim and jump at the same time. In other shooters this might not matter as much, but in Splatoon, where mobility is hugely important and the B button is also used to climb walls, being able to adjust aim while hitting it is huge in terms of being able to perform more complicated maneuvers. In addition, using motion doesn't even completely turn the right stick off. It's true that there's no way to adjust vertical aim with it, but it still works perfectly fine for horizontal aiming. In fact, most players will hold the controller like this, so they can move it left or right, while also tilting the stick in that direction to turn sideways at a much higher speed than just using stick or motion. If you see people doing really quick 180s in high-level play, this method is basically the only way to do it at that speed, unless you really whip your body around using just motion. Personally, if I'm in a firefight, I will use the stick for horizontal aiming and the gyroscope for vertical aiming. If I need to jump or climb, I can still rely on horizontal motion controls to change my aim while I'm doing that. A good rule to follow is stick for larger motions and gyro for more precise ones. This is just a small taste of things you can do with motion. If you want an actual tutorial, there are plenty of videos around there with better hand cams than I have, and my goal is just to explain why it's better than sticks. Besides the helpful one I talked about before, which in my opinion is the only completely valid one, the common arguments against motion are that it feels awkward or is hard to use. Again, if you were to practice using that method rather than give up quickly because of first impressions and actually improve with it, you would find that it would become easier over time, like any new skill you're learning, and you'll probably be able to hit a higher skill ceiling than you would with sticks. Yes, I'm only as good as I am now because I played the first game with motion exclusively for 2 years. Yes, it could feel awkward using motion for the first time, but it's the same level of awkwardness I'd have if I tried using sticks now, and giving another 2 years of only using sticks, I still wouldn't be as good as I am now with motion, besides the improvements that I'd naturally gain for the fundamentals along the way. Maybe you are the 1 in a million person whose maximum stick skill exceeds their maximum motion skill, but by completely disregarding it right out the gate, all you're really doing in most cases is giving yourself a handicap intentionally, and giving yourself a disadvantage against the majority of other players who use motion. Nothing I've said yet has convinced you to give motion a try. At least play a few levels in single player using your favorite weapon out of the bunch, with motion on, so you can feel yourself start to get used to it. You'll probably thank me later. So you figured out what controller and what control scheme you're going to use, and that's it, right? Wrong. You also have control sensitivity to figure out. Motion and stick sensitivity can be adjusted separately of each other at intervals of 0.5, ranging from -5 to +5. This gives you a huge amount of options to play around with. In general, keeping with the whole sticks for large adjustments, motion for precision thing, most players prefer a higher stick sensitivity compared to motion. If you're coming from Splatoon 1, even if you need a somewhat lower sensitivity for easier sniping, you'll most likely want something greater than 0, since Splat 2's controls are overall less sensitive than the first game's, and you'll probably need it to be higher, so it's closer to what you've already been getting used to using in the past. Other than telling you that I use either +2 motion +3 sticks, or +4 motion +5 sticks depending on my mood, and that I like to use shooters and blasters, there's not really much else I can do to help you figure out the sensitivity other than encourage experimentation, since it's very subjective, depending on both weapon class and your personal preference. It is worth noting that it's actually a lot easier to use different sensitivities for different weapons in Splatoon 2 compared to 1, because you are now able to adjust your sensitivity within a private battle lobby, so if you swap weapons mid-tournament set and need to change sensitivity for that, you could do that really quickly compared to having to back out the lobby and annoy everyone with taking a lot of time in the first game. Hopefully I was able to give you some useful advice that'll help you figure out what control method works for you, and if not, I hope I was at least able to shed some light on how Splatoon 2 works. Like I said earlier, I'm planning on making at least one competitive Splatoon 2 guide a month, and we'll probably be uploading scrims and tournament matches to this channel in the future, so if you're interested in the competitive Splatoon scene, be sure to subscribe and follow me on Twitch where I'll be regularly streaming the game, link in the description. If that's not enough to convince you to subscribe, I also have an ongoing Let's Play of Xenoblade Chronicles X, and a bunch of other videos like this analysis of the recent Ultra Sun and Moon trailers, which will probably be on screen right now. Thanks for watching, and until next time, this is Luxon, signing off.